Thank you, gentlemen. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Steen, and it has to do with student funding. Democrat leaders frequently argue that public schools are underfunded. Given that Iowa's general fund budget is $9.4 billion, with more than half of that allocated to education, it's $22,000 per student in the state of Iowa when you combine state, local, and federal dollars. What do you believe is the real solution to improving academic outcomes? Is it truly more funding, or is this issue rooted in spending habits?
Part of my answer on property taxes deal with the spending issue that we have. We have a lot of money going into our public schools right now, and thank the Lord for the ESA program and school choice. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome bill that was passed. We have to create competition. We have to create competition and allow parents to choose where their kids are going, like school choice, like the ESA program, where they can take those dollars and put them into schools that are actually going to teach our kids the way they should be taught. So we do not have a funding problem within our public schools. And for the Democrats to come out and say, hey, anything about money, look at Minneapolis. Look at these states that are Democrat run. Watch what's going to happen to Iowa if Rob Sand comes into this office. So we do not have a funding problem within our public schools. We have a problem with ideology and requirements being pushed down upon our kids in public schools that are not right, that are downright evil, and they need to be wiped away. So again, thank you for school choice, ESA program. It's not a spending problem.
Mr. Lane.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I spent the better part of a decade deeply involved in education. I've built schools. I traveled the country visiting schools for 2 years, visited over 70 of the most innovative schools in existence to start schools myself. We do not have a lack of spending issue. We have the issue of spending too much money and then decreasing quality in education. That's what's happening in our state. But here's the thing. I am all for ESAs. I am all for parents having more choice over where kids go to school and more choice over where their dollars are spent. The issue is, there's not a time in our state that less than 80% of our kids won't be in public schools. The governor has to be the #1 advocate for public school kids. We need to have innovation zones within education. We need to wipe out the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners and put in place people that will hold teachers accountable for when they indoctrinate our kids, suspend their licenses, or permanently take their licenses if we have to. But we have to get in there and say we're not giving up on public schools or public school kids, because that's where the battle's going to be fought.
Thank you. Mr. Sherman.
I believe in the money following the student. That tax money belongs to the parents. It doesn't belong to the state. That's the first principle we need to make sure we understand. So it needs to follow the students. Also, it goes back to the whole transparency issue. If the people could see where money was being spent, they would do something about it. In Iowa City, I looked at the website a few years ago, and they had 7 full-time DEI directors, and that's probably a budget of $1 million right there. And so that's a huge problem. We need to replace Common Core with common sense in our schools again, and get back to the basics and put our money where it is. There's an average of about the last numbers I saw was an average of about $22,000 per student per year being spent on education in Iowa. I think that's enough money. It's just, it's a matter of how it's being spent, And so I totally support the ESA program. I think we need to expand it and in some fashion make it even available to homeschoolers if they want that. Some homeschoolers don't, but that's a good point.
Thank you. Representative Andrews.
Well, thank you. A lot of what has already been said I agree with, and I've also worked on that in the trenches to actually get ESAs here. Also, the money follows the student, not the system. And it's a subtle change, but once people understand, no, that money doesn't belong to the public schools until the parent chooses to send them there. And once they understand that, they understand why the money needs to follow that student so that the parents have the best decision or make the best choice for that particular student. One other thing I would like to say is part of my Get Iowa Back to #1 plan is we do have to change the curriculum. We've already started in elementary school, but we realize we can't change the curriculum in elementary schools until we really effectively change those in our teaching colleges such as UNI. And we are doing this year in the Iowa legislature, and as governor, I will do even more to get Iowa education back to number one.
Thank you. Next question to you, Simon.
Mr. Lane, there's probably very few, if any, people in this room in which cancer has not touched their lives in some fashion. Iowa has a cancer problem. If we made you governor, how would you address it?
You know, I think this is one of the foundational and generational issues that we have to face. I said earlier, Iowa has more cancer than anywhere ever in the history of human civilization. If you live in one of the top 10 counties of cancer in Iowa, your lifetime rate of cancer is 1 in 2. If you live in Iowa versus Nevada, your likelihood of getting cancer is 40% more in Iowa just by making that choice. Look, I've been very clear about this. I'm touching on a subject that many people won't touch on. We have to confront the biggest issue. We are being lied to by big agriculture companies that are trying to cover themselves and protect their bottom lines. They know the harm of their products. The evidence is there. The research shows it. I have read studies. I've read probably 50 studies on this subject alone. We have to hold them accountable. If I'm governor, they will not be able to operate without giving us their research. We will perform independent research as well to make sure these products are safe. It is the generational issue of our time, and we have to confront it head on.
Mr. Sherman.
I agree with that point about independent research. I've been saying that all over the state. We have to have research that has no conflict of interest attached to it. That's an absolute must. And we have to have multiple studies. And I've been developing relationships with people who have the knowledge, chemistry knowledge, to be able to actually point out, you know, if that research is correct or not. So we have to have that kind of research. And so there's another, and one of the things that is a very simple thing that we can do right away is just make more awareness on the issue of radon. Now, radon is just one little sliver of the piece. It only causes lung cancer, but we need to make people way more aware of that because there's a lot of radon in Iowa soil, and so we need to have a lot more awareness when it comes to radon. But I think the research and again, everything is going to go back to transparency almost at some point. So we have to make sure that the people in our state understand. When we know the solution, it'll be easy to fix. Or when we know what the problem is, then the solution will be easy to arrive at.
Representative Andrews.
Yes, sir. So when we heard that devastating news about Iowa's high cancer rates, I was actually in session. And I was sitting next to a Democrat doctor, and I said, what is this about, and what's your first initial reaction? And we both agreed that we have ideas, but we really need to find out first. And so we worked with the governor's team and our leadership to make sure that there's a $1 million funding research at the University of Iowa to find out why. Now, we need to go further. One thing that does not do is address pediatric cancer rates. And so we have looked at addressing that by adding $3 million more to that to address the pediatric cancer rates. And so I can tell you that it's not to do what our other chamber is doing and protecting those that are causing cancer. That's the opposite direction that we need to do. Take care of violence.
Yes, Simon, my father passed away 3.5 years ago of kidney cancer. My mother just survived breast cancer. Both of those were not genetic. Those are near and dear to my heart. This is a very important issue for me, for my family. My in-laws are here. They started the Rally Against Cancer about 25 years ago that's raised millions of dollars for the Nurse Navigator program through Stoddard. My wife is here. She just left the Stoddard board to join the Unity Point board. I am surrounded by people on a regular basis that attack issues and attack challenges and attack problems. The cancer issue in the state of Iowa is going to be a years-long problem. It's going to take years. It's going to take the right people sitting down in the right room. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, purple, blue, doesn't matter to me. What we need are the right people at the table so we can figure out what are causing the issues, number one, and how we're going to solve those issues. I do not lay this on the backs of farmers, not at all. We do have radon. We've got issues with de-icer on airplanes. We've got issues with golf courses. We've got issues all around this state. We need to identify the problems, get the right people to the table, and solve them, but it's going to take years to do that.
All right, question number 3, we're going to start with you, Mr. Sherman. Moms for Liberty's mission is to defend parental rights at all levels of government. So this one is to that. Public education was historically centered on academic instruction and civic preparation. In recent years, schools have taken on broader roles related to social issues, identity, and student well-being. What do you believe is the proper purpose of public education? And how would you define the boundary between parental authority and the role of schools?
Well, God gave children to parents, not to the state. That's a bottom line that we need to remember. And so the parents should have complete control over the children's education. As far as the decisions that teachers make, like medical decisions, things like that, those things should never be made without the parents' consent unless it's an absolute emergency of some kind. So we need to put this concept of God back in our schools. The 10 Commandments on our walls would be a good idea to start with. One of the 10 Commandments is honor your father and mother. And if the schools honored the students honor father and mother, that would be a good start. So I totally support the idea of parental rights. We have to make that another foundational principle, an absolute foundational principle in our school system and restore that. This is something that started over 100 years ago to get children away from parents, and this was happening on purpose. And so we need to realize that this is a war that we're in.
Thank you, sir. Representative Andrew, the role of public education today, and where is that line between parental authority and what the schools are trying to do?
Well, thank you, Tina. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I authored the landmark Parents' Rights Bill. And this is something that every person in the entire globe agreed and understood up until 3 seconds ago. For their associations and all things that we, right? That parents have the fundamental right, that's a key phrase, and every person in the entire globe agreed and understood up until 3 seconds ago, right? That parents have the fundamental right, that's a key phrase, and responsibility to raise your child, to be responsible for their education, for their medical decisions, for their associations, and all things that we call parenting. And certainly in this area of education, it is even more critical. I was looking at I was listening to a podcast called Sold a Story, and it showed exactly how the so-called education complex has really been taken over by the left. And it's only by parents standing up and realizing enough is enough that we began to expose all the things that were in our education system. Parents have the fundamental right to raise their children in education.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steen, the role of public education, and where is that line?
Yeah. When my son Riker was 4 years old in preschool, we got an Amazon wish list sent to us over email, and we noticed that the teacher wanted us to purchase a book called Jacob's New Dress. And the book was about a boy wanting to be a girl, and at the end of it, he starts wearing dresses and he finally feels alive. That is the line. That is the line. And my wife was in that school so fast I couldn't even hold the door open for her. And we had a conversation with the teacher. And the teacher said, "Is this a religious thing?" And I said, "It can be a religious thing, but let's make it a developmental thing." That is the line. And our teachers oftentimes are being forced to put that information in front of our children, and they should not be forced to do that. What I believe public schools should be doing is teaching life skills to our kids. I'm an advocate for vocational studies, industrial arts, teaching real-world opportunities so kids can learn at a young age how to build things, how to create things, how to cook things. That's what we should be doing with kids. And I believe that this isn't on the backs of teachers. It's on the backs of those that are putting these standards upon our teachers and forcing it down our children's throats.
Mr. Lane?
So I think what we have to frame this as is as a generational fight for the institutions in our society. The left, for a long time, publicly made it known that they were going after the institutions in society: education, business, government, all of these institutions. And they've been tremendously successful at permeating these organizations. And education is one that they have targeted so deeply because they know if they can get their hands on your children, on our children, that they can work to change their beliefs, to alter society in the future. It is one of the most sinister things you could imagine doing, because you're taking an innocent, vulnerable child that's there for curiosity, that's there to learn new things and make friends, and you're molding them for a specific purpose, an evil purpose, I'll say. Look, when we were starting schools, one of my foundational principles that I said is, we are going to strengthen the parent and child bond, not get in between it. Public school is to promote civic virtue, to understand the principles of faith in our country and our culture. And that's what it will be when I am governor.
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Representative Andrews,
Yes, sir.
wearing the cloth of our nation, we always say that the people who sign on that dotted line are prepared to sacrifice everything up to and including their lives.
Yes.
For a lot of people, that was a vague concept. It's no longer vague in Iowa. We just lost 2. We had 2 more wounded. And when they get out, are we treating them right? Could we improve veterans' benefits if you were governor of Iowa?
Yes, sir. As you know, this is a very, very important part of my life. I got into politics. I had 0 interest in politics. You know, we lost my son who struggled with mental health challenges. Some people get involved in politics to be something. Some people get involved to do something. I've worked with all the veteran organizations. I think we're up to 22 that we know of officially veteran suicides a day. A day. We have to address that huge need of our servicemen and women who put their name on the dotted line and they come home and they can't fit in. We have to address that. I'm addressing that now as a legislator and as a community leader, but as governor, we need to put more resources, work with HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen units, all the things that address the PTSD and take care of our veterans who are taking care of us.
Thank you.
Adam.
Yeah. Fundamentally, the reason we exist as a free nation is because of our veterans. It's because those that serve, those that keep us protected. So thank you, those that have served. Thank you, those that continue to serve. I had a moment when I was working with the state where I got to oversee Veterans Affairs. It was before we created alignment and combined the Vets Home with Veterans Affairs. And I got to see, as a businessman, the mess it can be, the challenge it can be. I was also part of bringing in Commandant Jacobus, who's now overseeing those areas. Commandant Jacobus loves our veterans. Commandant Jacobus is fighting on a regular basis for all the resources, all the benefits, everything that he can do on a regular basis for our veterans. And as governor, I will keep Jacobus there, and I will do everything I can to provide for our veterans because of the service that they provided for us.
You know, first I just want to say, Adam, I agree with you on thanking our veterans. My mom is here, and she's a veteran, and so Mom, thank you for your service. Thank you for coming. I don't get to do that often, so I'm very thankful. But let me just say that, you know, we have had a tradition in our country of supporting veterans. And I believe that, you know, I grew up in the early 2000s. We sent a lot of my own friends over to Iraq and Afghanistan. We spent $10 trillion. And I don't know that anyone in this room would say we have a lot to show for it. And then when our people come home, we were busy building a nation somewhere else, and we didn't build the infrastructure to take care of them here. That's a travesty. When my great-grandfather was farming on our farm that I live on now, He would teach groups of hundreds of World War II veterans how to farm. There was GI Bills for that. We were helping them buy farms. We created thousands of new farmers through these programs. We supported them. I would like to give tuition-free trade school to our veterans. I would like to find ways to get them back onto farms. And let me just say one thing, this is controversial.
Thank
that
you,
if we-
Mr. Lane.
Okay. I'll say the controversial thing later.
Mr. Sherman.
Yeah, I mentioned early in my opening comments that I have 2 sons serving in the military, and my one son here is a combat veteran, and he received a Bronze Star for dragging wounded soldiers off the street. And I know, that when he came home, it was difficult. He couldn't drive down the road without looking at the overpass. And so it was difficult. And the veterans services were very important to him and the counseling he got. And I don't think his situation was severe. It didn't seem that way to me. You might have to ask him, how severe it was. But I'll tell you, nobody is going to be stronger for veterans benefits than I am. I can just tell you that, because I love my sons and I love all the people that serve our country. And I'll just say this, that one thing that really needs to change is that our VA hospitals are pretty spread out. We need a medical care program where a veteran can go to any hospital, any doctor, anywhere, and have it paid for.
Next question you can guess from me is on education. This time we're going to go higher education. Many parents and educators have raised concerns that colleges of education increasingly emphasize progressive or ideological frameworks in teacher preparation programs, and that these approaches are showing up in classroom practices. Because these institutions largely control teacher licensure and accreditation, they shape the culture of K-12 education statewide. As governor, how will you ensure that teacher preparation programs prioritize strong academic instruction and professional neutrality while still addressing Iowa's teacher shortage? And would you support expanding alternative certification pathways to diversify the teacher pipeline?
I get a whole minute on that one?
She'll take 30 seconds. That's it.
I'm going to reframe, Micah. I'm going to reframe, though. First and foremost, our universities should not be promoting DEI. They should not be promoting anything in that nature. Anybody who is arguing for that is insane, and they should not be even thinking about those types of things. So number one, we have a new chair of the Board of Regents who came right out on his first day, and he said there's no more woke that's going to be put through these universities, and that should be celebrated, 100%. From a school perspective, I believe we should provide an opportunity for universities to start teaching classical education so that fundamentally our K through 12 areas, we can offer up an option for parents even in the public schools. So right now we have a wonderful opportunity with school choice, but I think public schools should get an option too. I think teachers want to teach classical education. And I think the university should offer that track line as well so that we could bring people into this state to learn that, and we can put them in schools right here in the state of Iowa.
Thank you, sir.
So, I'm watching my minute here. I'm starting.
You want your controversial thing first?
No. I'll do the controversial thing later. It's going to be really good. Okay. So, number one, I think we have to confront this. The value proposition of higher education is decreasing precipitously. In our schools, when we get to high school, we have an entire track of convincing kids that you don't need to go to college. Do you really need to go to college to do this? And unfortunately, our universities are digging their own grave. So look, this is about incentives to me. Our universities get a lot of money from us. How about this? The Board of Regents is overturned. We have good people like Adam's talking about on there. If they won't stop teaching what they're teaching, woke indoctrination, we're going to pull funding from them, and then we'll give it to the veterans to start their trade school, to start their farms, or something else like that. That's what we do. They will listen when we start to pull their funding. And it's that deep of an issue. But let me just say to any kids out there, think long and hard before you go to college. The value proposition is not there.
Mr. Sherman.
Well, I hardly know where to start on this one. It's a huge issue. Education has to be reformed. I've been building a team of people already who think differently than what we already have. I've heard people talk about the praxis test for teachers. Some people think it needs to be reinstated. Others think it was useless and wasn't the right kind of test. So, but what we do need is a test that can identify people who can do the job and not have to go through the same kind of programs that produce somebody who simply comes out of higher education and then they go out and then their job is primarily to indoctrinate students with a leftist ideology or a woke ideology, and that kind of thing has to end. And so that's something that we really have to do. And I just have to say, Thomas Jefferson said, inform the people. Inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberties. And so we have to put the only safe place to secure our liberties is in the people, and we have to start looking to the people, and they have the answers to these things, and not always higher education.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a very long question. Here's a very short
Representative
question.
Andrews.
Oh, did we not get to any of them? Sorry, I'm messing up again.
Simon asked me a question twice, and now, okay, I'm just messing with you, sir. So first of all, as you know, education is I'm passionate about that. When I was a kid, when all of you guys were kids, I was not just near the top, we led the nation for decades. We willingly gave up the Iowa model, took on the national model of No Child Left Behind, Common Core, ESSA, all those crazy things, and now we're number 23, and no one's talking about that. It's an outrage. Number one thing we need to do is restore the Iowa model, restore phonics, eliminate and replace Common Core and ESSA and everything associated with it. In my district, there was no homework. And when I say that, I mean as a command, there shall be no homework. How are we going to learn? We need to restore the Iowa model. In my district, just to restore phonics took 12 teacher in-service days just to teach the teachers how to teach phonics. And so as governor, I will restore Iowa education back to number one as my number one priority.
Mr. Lane, long question, now short question. When does life begin?
Life begins at conception. And here's the thing. I have 60 seconds to talk about this, so I will talk about it for 60 seconds, even though it's a really simple question. This is a foundational issue for civilization. It is. And we can all say these things, but I'm going to tell you, for a long time, I believe politicians have been using this issue to keep us on their team because we'll say, I'll never vote for a pro-choice candidate. Meanwhile, they go off and do things like vote for the NED funding or vote for kill switches on cars. I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of supporting these politicians that go off and trade our civil liberties. But here's the deal. Life is one of those things that you can't fudge on. I don't tell this story often, and I'll be very brief about it. But my wife and I went through a process, and we were at a fertility clinic. We are now banned for life from that clinic because we refused to discard the embryos. And the ones we refused turned into our youngest son, Fritz. And so that's how far you have to go with this.
Life is one of the fundamental issues that our government is supposed to protect. It's in the Declaration of Independence. One of the unalienable rights is life. And and I believe life begins at conception. And I was happy to vote for the heartbeat bill, which prevented surgical abortions after 6 weeks. But folks, we need to do better. We need to do better. It was a step forward, but now we have abortion pills being mailed into our state, and it's dangerous. And we have no way of even tracking that. We need to do much, much better. But life is nobody's going to be stronger for life. I was a co-founder, board chair, and president of Informed Choices Medical Clinics for 10 years. I've been working in pro-life for a long time. It's a passion of mine. And so that's really, really important. But life goes all the way to the other end of the spectrum. It's not just the preborn. We need to take care of our elders. There's a lot of problems that I've been hearing about when it comes to elder care. And then there's life all the way in the middle, which gets to the issues of cancer and all the things we've been talking about.
Representative Andrews.
There should be a real simple answer. I'm pro-life. I believe life begins at conception, and I will protect life from conception until natural death. Up until the day that I announced for my governor's race, I had been scheduled to be on Pulse Life board, or at least be considered for that. And the reason that I had been vetted for that, obviously I can't do that now because it looks like an endorsement if they do that, but the reason they had vetted me is because that is so critical to the foundation. Some people say, well, why is life, are you a one-issue voter? It's not that we're one-issue voters, it's that it's the first issue. If you can't get life right, then I can't trust anything else that you've got. Life, liberty, and as Joe Biden said, you know the thing, is to be protected at all costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Andrews.
Mr. Steen.
Life begins at conception, first and foremost. That's the most important issue of this entire gubernatorial race. It's the most important issue. And it's because it's the most important issue. I want to know why Randy Feenstra is not on that stage over there answering that question. Why is Randy Feenstra not answering questions like we are answering? Because I tell you who will answer that question. It's Rob Sand. And Rob Sand will say the heartbeat bill went too far. The heartbeat bill did not go too far. We need to push that further. We need to put a conception bill in. We need to decimate the chemical abortions. You talk about water quality. What's happening in our water because of those chemical abortions that are coming through there? Randy Feenstra is the perceived front runner in this race. We do not have the ability as a populace to drag him across the finish line to beat Rob Sand. That's why this is so critical right now, and it's because of life.
And on that note, we're going to take a 15-minute intermission. Please get back quickly. And we will pick this back up at 8:15 exactly.